Welcome back. January 6th, like September 11th or December 7th, is a date that immediately communicates the horror of that single day. But since then, many Republican members of Congress have tried to rewrite history, denying there was a riot at the Capitol, some denying the violence by pro-Trump insurrectionists, some denying that somehow former President Trump didn't incite the riot. Well, Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger is not one of those Republicans. In fact, he says the vast majority of his Republican colleagues do believe the former president did incite the riot, but have remained silent simply to keep their jobs. Well, Congressman Kinzinger joins me now. Congressman, before I get to January 6th, you're a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, not just as a member of Congress dealing with it. You were there. I want to ask you about the headline in The Economist, basically calling it a crushing defeat. Do you agree or disagree with that headline?
No, I agree. It's a crushing defeat. You know, the Taliban always had a saying. They said America has the watches, but we have the time. I'm proud of the American people for sticking by this mission for 20 years. We actually needed to do it longer. We still have troops in Kosovo. But unfortunately, it worked. The Taliban have outlasted the will of the United States. It was not a hot war, really. It was basically a peacekeeping operation, and we may have to go back now. It is a crushing defeat, and I'm really sad about it, honestly.
What do you think is going to end up? I mean, is this, look at Bagram Air Base. Do you think we're more likely to occupy Bagram or have to somehow attack it because our enemies have taken it over?
Oh, I do think it's quite likely we're going to have to, either when we return to Afghanistan because, of the existential threat to us or our allies, reoccupy Bagram, or we may have to bomb it if there's some kind of an air mission. It's sad. And again, I think the big thing is this. We had set out, look, I wish it would have been a lot shorter of a mission, shorter of a time, but we set out so that the Afghan government could defend itself. And we only had 2,500 troops there, 5,000 NATO troops, and the Afghanistan government was doing 98% of the fighting against the Taliban. It's no wonder they're collapsing when the U.S. says we're gone. But it was really a small price to pay for, frankly, holding off the inevitable bad that, unfortunately, we're going to see.
All right, I want to turn to January 6th. I think it's safe to say on January 7th that a majority of people, even in Congress, or Republicans in Congress, thought, okay, this was going to be the turning point. This was going to be the moment that Republicans realized Trumpism is a virus inside the Republican Party that needs to be eradicated. Here we are 6 months and 5 days later, and boy, and let me read you this headline in Oklahoma. This is a censure resolution in Oklahoma, not for people that voted to impeach like you did. This resolution is to censure Senators James Lankford and Jim Inhofe for failure to delay the certification of fraudulent electoral votes in the 2020 presidential election. That's the actual wording in this county Republican Party. And just so you think I'm not picking on one county in Oklahoma, the actual chair of the Republican Party has endorsed a primary challenger to James Lankford over this issue. Senator Lankford was standing up there to object to the electoral votes in Arizona when Vice President Pence was taken off the Senate floor. Senator Lankford is a traitor now inside Trump's Republican Party, Congressman? Seriously?
Oh, look, here's what's happened. It's just like Donald Trump's method, right? I mean, the biggest enemy to MAGA world right now is not even me or Liz Cheney. It's Mike Pence. Mike Pence is one of the most faithful people to Donald Trump. But if you ever turn an ounce against Donald Trump, you're out of the tribe. And so to all of my colleagues in politics, let me say this to you. You either have to be a zombie for the MAGA belief system, whatever that is today or tomorrow, it varies every day based on Donald Trump's whims, or actually stand up and tell your constituents the truth. And that's what we have to do, is tell people the truth. We all know what the truth is. You guys know what the truth is. The American people and your base deserve to hear it. So that's the moment we're in. Just this kind of chaotic, people scared to do anything, scared of their own shadow, absolutely desperate to get reelected. And meanwhile, the innocent people of our base that in many cases have been led to believe that the election was stolen is not hearing anything from any of the people that they trust. And actually, there are members of this base are so believing misinformation, they're getting themselves killed from the coronavirus. Let me ask you this, Congressman. You're running for reelection. You're running sort of unabashedly on this. If you lose your primary, what does that say? I mean, does it mean that misinformation is winning? Does it mean our democracy is as fragile as it appears? Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's a choice. Look, no matter how a primary comes out, I know that I will have put it all on the table and done the right thing. And that's a choice for the Republican Party to make, because it's not going to be people like me or some, Oklahoma state committeemen. It's going to be the people that go and vote in these primaries. And if our party decides that, COVID vaccine hesitancy or COVID denialism or January 6th was BLM and Antifa, but yet we don't want to investigate it because none of that makes sense. If we want to be that as a party, that's the choice the party can make. You will never be a national party again, and the American people will find something different to replace you, because this is unsustainable. But I'm going to fight for the soul of this party. Right now, it's like being on a plane that's been hijacked, screaming towards the ground, and it may feel like a fun ride, but it doesn't end well.
The House Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, has a decision to make on the members, what Republicans to appoint. I'm sure you're hearing scuttlebutt. I'm doubtful he's going to pick you as one of those fives, but, maybe it's possible. Do you think he's going to appoint folks whose job is to hijack this committee, or at least not be unhelpful to this committee? Where is he going to fall on this?
I think he's going to find people not controversial, besides like maybe Jim Jordan, and that they're going to act to be like really smart kind of scholars and all this, but their job is going to be to scuttle this. If I was Kevin McCarthy, I'd be very fearful of the January 6th committee. If I'm a Democrat on the committee, I would be very intent on making sure that this is by the books and doesn't turn political, because there's enough information that's going to come out. We want to know all these details. Why didn't the president call the guard? Where was Kevin? What conversations did Kevin have? What members were involved? And I think we'll get to those answers.
Do you think a complete accounting can be found without subpoenaing former President Trump?
I do, because I think everybody around him knows what happened. I think if you subpoena Trump, it should only be if you need to, because I think the bottom line is that can create a spectacle. But I also think, look, in the future, whether it's a year or two, even through these FBI cases against these insurrectionists, all the information will come out. There's this narrative that it wasn't an armed insurrection. Well, it was. There's guns, there was arms, and all that stuff will come out and be taken. So if I'm a Republican member of Congress or any leader right now, I'd be very careful at the sides I'm taking, because in the very near future, people are going to know the truth, and I want to be on the side of truth.
What do you think of Toyota's decision to bow to a pressure campaign, not to give money to those who voted to not certify the election? What do you make of this style of politics? Is this something that is needed, or do you think this is more polarizing?
So I personally don't like a lot of the, I don't want to call it cancel culture, because that's been hijacked too, but the kind of forcing people to make decisions based on that loudness. But look, I also can understand why a company would not want to vote for, or would not want to help somebody, and why a PAC, which is made up of employees of that company, would not want to help somebody that did not vote to carry out their constitutional duty. I can fully understand that, and so I'm not critical of a decision to stop giving to those members.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, Republican from Central Illinois. It's good to have you on, sir. Appreciate you coming on.
You bet.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.